All right, and welcome to another episode of The Game Plan. This episode is all about the Baltimore Ravens versus the LA Rams on Monday Night Football. Great game. When I broke down the numbers and all the analytics and everything, it's a lot more interesting of a game than you'd think it might be if you're just looking at these two teams on papers and the records. If you're new to this show, here's what we do. We run through quickly the key injuries to both teams. We look at the key statistics. We look at the key analytics. I call them gambler stats. We'll explain them when we get there. We use all of that to predict a game plan and a path to victory for both the Rams and the Ravens, and then we end the video with my fantasy football projections for each of the key players in this game as well. Before we get rolling as well, if you could give me 2 seconds of your time for 2 clicks, a like and a subscribe. We're very close to becoming that YouTube partner. Once we do so, we can make these videos more interactive, and we need your help to get there, so we would appreciate that. But let's go ahead and get rolling now with the key injuries to the Rams and the Ravens. You can see the Rams, they have a couple wide receivers and a right tackle. Their offensive line, which has been banged up and hasn't been playing particularly well this year, this offensive line. They've come over under some criticism. But you see Woods and Cooks, I think they'll both end up playing, and then we'll see about the tackle. For the Ravens, you have basically a backup wide receiver. The nose tackle is an important one, but nobody's doubtful. Nobody's been ruled out yet. So the key players as of today are in the game, and as well as you could be, I guess, at this point in the NFL season. The next thing I like to do is compare the offensive and defensive units, and I put, passing offense versus passing defense and vice versa, just to get an idea of where these teams are at this point in the season. And these rankings are in terms of yards accumulated. You see the Rams offense ranks 8th in the passing game versus the 18th ranked passing defense for the Ravens. The Ravens passing offense is 20th versus the 15th ranked passing defense for the Rams. Again, it's in yards accumulated. Now, with as efficient as Lamar Jackson has been, do I think that the Ravens are the 20th best passing team? I wouldn't say that. I would say they're better than that. But given how successful they have been on the ground, I think that pushes their passing, yardage accumulation artificially low. I don't think it's a real good barometer of where they're at as an offense. I've said these about other teams as well that are really good at running the ball. If you don't have to pass, then your passing yards aren't going to be as much as possible, okay? Then you look at the run game. The running offense for the Rams is 20th versus the 7th ranked running defense for the Ravens. And then no surprise there, the Ravens have the best running offense behind Ingram, Edwards, and Lamar Jackson versus the 5th ranked running defense for the Rams. So basically, if you're looking at the way these two teams stack up, I think it's pretty interesting. So I think the Rams defense is fit to try to slow down the Ravens running game. However, the Patriots are a better run defense than the Rams are, and we saw what the Ravens did to the Patriots. So will they neutralize? Will they completely stop the Ravens rushing? Well, if we're just talking about Ingram and Edwards or whoever the running backs are, I would say that the chances are pretty decent. But once you factor in a guy like Lamar Jackson who can just make things happen on the ground, then all of a sudden that defensive line stretches. There are more holes to run through. It's very, very difficult to defend. On the passing side, I think the Rams with Jalen Ramsey are certainly better since they made that move. But the Ravens are efficient. The thing with the Ravens, though, is they're not taking a lot of over the top shots. They're kind of moving the ball with tight ends, and just basically the teams have to respect the run game so much that there are some avenues open, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. The Rams, they have to get the ball running, but again, we can talk about that in a little bit. Now, what I call key analytics or the gambler stats. If you're not an NFL bettor, what they do is they basically look at a few of the key things first. Now, there's always a secret sauce that gets much more in many more details than this, but at a high level, you look at yards per play, how efficient is your offense or defense, yards per play given up. You look at situational football like third down percentage, fourth down percentage, and red zone touchdown percentage, not scoring, but touchdown. Once you get in the red zone, can you stay on the field on third down? You get in the red zone, can you punch it into the end zone? That's very important. Then you look at turnover margin and penalty yardage. So if you compare all of these, you see that the Rams get offensively 5.7 yards per play. The Ravens defense gives up 5.6 yards per play, although I will say as of late they've been getting better and better. Now you look at the Ravens offense, 6.4 yards per play. It's a lot. Compared to the Rams defensive yards per play, 4.8. That's pretty few. I mean, both of these teams offensively get more than they give up. That's good. And they do it by a wide margin, but you have to give the yards per play just based on how powerful this offense is. You'd have to give a little bit of an advantage there towards the Baltimore Ravens. I would have said the same is the case with the offensive, the passing units versus the defensive passing units and so on and so forth. What we saw in the last graphic there, I think, again, it lines up for the Ravens. You look at situational football, third down percentage offensively for the Rams, 35.9%. Conversions on third downs. That's bad. And you see this, there's generally, as I've been doing these videos, you kind of notice the good running teams are good on third down and fourth down and red zone touchdown percentage. The teams that can't get the run game going, they're more one-dimensional. Well, you know what? If you can't run the ball, you end up finding yourself in a lot of third and longs most of the time. It doesn't go well for them. So you see the Baltimore Ravens get off the field 40% of the time. Then you look at the offensive third down conversions. I would have expected a little bit higher, but 49.1%. It's almost half the time they're converting third downs. That's pretty solid. And actually, the Rams' defense on third downs is pretty good. Then you see the Ravens on fourth down. They're pretty ridiculous. The Rams are not. So, if you get into a situation where you're trying to extend drives at the end of the game, like if Baltimore is losing to the Rams late in the game or vice versa, I would say that favors the Ravens once again. Then you look at the all-important offensive red zone touchdown percentage. The Rams, when they get to the red zone, are pretty efficient at 60%. And then you see the Ravens are also pretty efficient, pretty darn efficient at 65%. Two-thirds of the time they get in the red zone, basically, they get a touchdown. And then you look defensively, the Ravens are better stopping touchdowns than the Rams are. Okay, so all of this stuff is stacking up. You see penalty yardage is about even. They're both very well coached teams and disciplined, so no surprise there. And the turnover margin, even though the Rams are on the negative side, it's fairly close. It's within a possession there. So again, if you look at this just on paper, just analytically, the Ravens should win this game. I believe they're favored by about 3.5 points, and that seems a little low to me. I would expect it to be about 4.5 or 5 based on just the analytics here. But it's going to be very interesting. Let's take a look at the game plan for the LA Rams and how can they win. And the first note there is stop being cute. I've been saying this and banging the drum now. I'm a little biased, to be honest with you, because I have both Jared Goff and Todd Gurley in my fantasy team. But Todd Gurley, you can make the argument that he's lost a step. I personally don't believe it. I think that the only difference between the Rams and Gurley this year, even if he has lost a little bit of a step or a half a step, the big difference is that they're not committing to the run. They're rotating him out on series. He's a volume running back. He always has to get volume to be good. And, everybody looking at Todd Gurley, just remember Jeff Fisher's last season. How good was Todd Gurley that year? How good was Jared Goff that year, right? When you go away from the run and you rotate in a Malcolm Brown or a Henderson or whatever, it's going to hurt the flow for Todd Gurley. He needs to be more involved. He had been more involved the last 2 years for the Rams. I'm sick of it, and I'm sure Rams fans are probably sick of it too. I'm sick of hearing about the offensive line. Just run the stupid ball like they did last week against the Chicago Bears. They gave him 25 carries, and what do you know? They win by 10 points, okay? Cooper Kupp, I think you need to use him in the seam routes. I say, look at that. That's a little bit of a mental kind of gaffe there. I said Ed Reed. It's not Ed Reed. It's Earl Thomas, but basically the very, very talented field general back in the free safety area. You use Kupp, you need to occupy him, and you need to use him in the deep seam so that things can open up underneath him. I don't love Cooks in this game in terms of projections. I think Robert Woods will have a pretty decent projection, but Cooper Kupp, you need to run him, even if he's just a decoy route all game, although I do think he'll have a nice game. You need to occupy Earl Thomas. It's not Ed Reed. It's Earl Thomas, okay? Get the ball out of Jared Goff's hands quickly. You know what? We saw it against the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. If he's hit early and often and they're trying to have Goff throw the ball 50 times against the Ravens, it's not the recipe for success. Get the ball out of his hands quickly. That would mean throwing the ball, by the way, to Todd Gurley. That would mean throwing quickly to Kupp, and maybe on some wide receiver screens and that kind of stuff. Get the ball out quickly so that you can take the deep shots, occupy this defensive line. And then one more time for emphasis, Todd Gurley, all night long. I don't care what the score is. You need to integrate him. If you need to pass, fine. Use him in the screen game. And stop with the Malcolm Brown stuff, by the way. If you want to rotate another running back in, use Henderson. That's what you drafted him for. That's what his skill set is. He can take screen passes to the house. I don't like what the Rams are doing with their personnel. I just don't. I haven't for weeks. When they commit to Todd Gurley, they generally win, and that's been the case now for, 3 years, 2.5, I guess. So enough with that stuff. So for the Ravens, I'm going to start with the last point on this graphic first. Just stop Todd Gurley. I was saying the key to success for the Rams is to get Todd Gurley going early and often. If the Ravens stop Todd Gurley, I think that's the game right there. I think that's the cover in the spread. I think the Ravens win easily if that happens. But moving up top, the Rams haven't played a mobile quarterback, I think, since they played the Seattle game, which, by the way, I think it went to overtime, or maybe Greg the Leg missed a field goal at the end of it was a close game. I think it was at the end of regulation. He missed a field goal that would have won. But long story short, the Rams are very good defense, very fast defense, but they haven't seen anything like Lamar Jackson yet. I think you can use him. It always makes me nervous because I remember the RG3 years in Washington very, very closely. It always makes me nervous to run the quarterback, but that will work and that will loosen up this strong defense. So getting him on the ground, I think that'll help. Running with Ingram and Edwards is fine, but I think both will find some room in the screen game as well. Marquise Brown, I like him as an over-the-top threat. The problem is he hasn't been playing a ton of snaps. They haven't really been making him an emphasis. I don't know if he's still banged up or if it's maybe just the flow of the game's getting off, but I'd like to see him run the top off of the defense, and I think things will open up underneath, for a Snead or a Boykin, and certainly the tight ends there. Let's see, Andrews, I think he'll have a field day. I think Boyle could actually have a very nice day as well. But again, I think that over-the-top thing needs to happen. Maybe they match up Jalen Ramsey against Marquise Brown. Don't worry about it. But let Hollywood Brown, man. Let him run, use his speed, get down there, take some shots. Even if, like I've been saying this in some of the other videos, even if, Lamar Jackson on purpose, you throw it 5 to 10 yards over his head, just take the shot so that the defense has to respect it. And then again, that last point, if you stop Gurley, I think good things will happen for the Baltimore Ravens. Let's finish this out now with some fantasy football projections. Okay, now I know there are some guys questionable. Of course, make sure to make sure that these guys are going to be playing, but I'm just going to assume that they all are. Jared Goff at a 16.3, that is a sit. Todd Gurley at a 12.44. Let me say this, that is a start, but it's not a touchdown. Todd Gurley needs to find the end zone for the Rams to win. I think he will outplay this projection, so he certainly needs that. Malcolm Brown at 4.71, that's a sit. Brandon Cooks, Woods, Kupp, if they all play, I think they're all starts, with Woods and Kupp being the likeliest to get in the end zone. Gerald Everett, I don't love this week. That's kind of a fringe on the bottom side of the starting for me. I think you can find better off of the waivers. And then the defense and special teams at 6.7. I think they're going to have a tough time. Baltimore's offense is very, very good. Now, if we look at the Ravens fantasy football projections, Lamar Jackson's a start every week. He is at a 20.19. That's a nice projection. He'll get you plenty of rushing yards, I think, this game too. Now, I think the Rams will do well defensively against the Ravens, but I don't think you can completely contain the Ravens at this point. They're just playing too well. Mark Ingram at a 13.46. I think he finds the end zone. Gus Edwards at 5.48 is an I wouldn't start him. Brown, 9.93. That's, I guess a reasonable one, but you can see I don't love the projections anyway. I should say Rockobot, my computer projections, don't love Boykin and Snead. If you're a daily fantasy player, I like Boykin as or Snead if that's your preference, but I like one of these guys to have a nice game underneath and just work kind of like seam routes and posts, that middle of the field a little bit over where the tight ends would usually catch the ball. I like those guys as a possible daily fantasy super budget play. Mark Andrews, like I said, I think he'll get in the end zone. Boyle could also get in the end zone. These multiple tight ends for the Baltimore Ravens are very good. In defense and special teams, I like what they're doing. And then I also like the matchup because Goff has been struggling so much. Again, if they can stop Gurley, I think this is an easy Ravens victory. So there you go. That takes me through the whole game plan. You were doing a couple more. Actually, we should be doing more this week than before. So check out this if you like the series. Also check out our whole network. We update every day for especially during the NFL season. We have a Week 12 playlist that we add this video among others too. And then always like, subscribe, comment. If you think I'm missing something, you're a fan of one of these teams, let me know what you agree or disagree with, and I'd love to have the conversation. Help me learn a little bit more about your team. I do watch these and I do study, but I'd love to get your thoughts on your team as well. Once again, everybody, I appreciate the time. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on another episode soon.